Alright, here we are, sitting on the anchor in the real world. I'm right here behind the camera, sitting in my seat, and I decided, who needs to look at me when you got this ocean view, right? So, for all of you who maybe never even seen the ocean, I don't know, but I decided I'd put the camera out there and you can watch the ocean in real time today. We'll get some people listen to. I think that'd be great. A beautiful day in the real world here today. A great chunk of soul food here. So I'll share it all. Now, this email is titled Adele's Sasquatch Completed Story with Photos. Here's the completed story of one you read today, June 3rd, 2025. It was the one that's titled Military Man Harassed in Broad Daylight. Anyway, I wasn't done writing down all that happened that day, and I thought I was hitting the draft button, and I hit send by mistake, so you didn't get any of the photos. Not sure if you want to call this part 2 or the rest of the story. Alright, let me scribe all the way down to the bottom. I don't have photos saved here, but let's get into it. Hello, Steve. You can use my name. It won't matter. Adele Hayes. By me being honest about what happened to me, I've already lost many friends and family members. As if I got up one morning and said to myself, I think I'm going to make up a whopper of a story about Sasquatch and see how many family members and friends I can get rid of. Not. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, we were headed up the mountain to my grandparents' cabin in Red Feather Lakes, Colorado. I remember we were going around a bend in the road and my grandfather hit something that looked like a man. It was very tall, dark, and full of hair. I remember that it hit the hood of the station wagon with its large hand. I was so young that I didn't think to look at the hood of the car the next morning to see if there was a dent. My great-grandmother, Mimi, was sitting next to me, and she said, Earl, my grandfather's name, aren't you going to stop and make sure that whatever you hit is either all right or it's dead? And I remember hearing him say, I've heard and read a lot about these things, and I'm not stopping. And it's for sure I'm not getting out of this car at night with that thing. So he kept driving on. I've often wondered what it was that he hit that night on that old, dark, dusky road. And now that I'm older and have had an encounter of my own, I know in my heart for sure what it was that he did hit on that old, dark, dusty road so many years ago. I've also wondered if the Sasquatch can follow a person by that person's smell. Or do they somehow tag you so they can keep up with you? I'm asking this because years later I was driving in the middle of a town, Kentwood, Michigan. Kentwood, Michigan. In a mobile home park. I'll have to send you photos of the area in another email. I was thinking about them until now, and I don't know how to pull them up now that I've started it on the email. I don't have photos of the two Sasquatch, just my yard, so maybe they aren't worth sending. I guess the one photo would be able to let you know how very close I was to these beings. Not far enough away, that's for sure. Anyway, we had a creek and lots of trees that lined the creek, good places for Bigfoot to hide in and behind. But since we didn't know that they were lurking about, we didn't give it any thoughts to ever look for them. I was sitting outside, talking on the phone with one of my friends. She was a talker, so I was just sitting there listening to her talk. And all of a sudden, this thing. At first, I thought it was a stray dog. It had long blonde hair like an Irish setter, only with blonde hair. It was down on all fours. I heard talking. And the voice said, "Can I go see what she's put out today to eat?" I then heard another voice say, I guess you can, but be careful. We had a slab of cement out back that I think someone had poured for the picnic table, and I used to toss out popcorn and any leftover food that we had for the wild critters that always came. We had ducks, wild turkeys, muskrats, skunks, groundhogs, all kind of wildlife. And this thing, I thought was a dog at first, got up next to the ducks they were eating, and it started eating as well. It sounded like a pig snorting and munching on the scraps that I'd tossed out there. And all of a sudden, it must have heard me talking to my friend on the phone, so it turned its head and looked right at me. Its face was almost black. Its nose looked kind of big, yet pushed in somewhat. Its hands were dark like its face, but it had blonde hair that moved side to side when the wind would hit it. It looked as if someone had brushed its hair. It was really pretty. Then it saw me. When it saw me, it stopped chewing and grunted, and all of a sudden it stood up. I'm only 4'8", and it was a lot taller than me. I said, "Oh my God, Gail, you're not going to believe me, but there are 2 Sasquatch in my backyard. I gotta let you go." And she hung up. At first, I had not seen the adult one, just the younger one that had come down to graze. Once it stood up, it started walking up the hill in our backyard, and when it got up alongside the fence, it dropped down on all fours again and took off. It moved so quick, like a roadrunner, and it was gone. The adult was standing over by my husband's shed. The top of the shed, the peak, was 8 feet tall, and this adult had its head over the top and was looking over it, so it had to be at least 10 feet tall. And then all of a sudden, I felt like I was in Disney World. My mind was saying these things aren't real. Then I remember thinking, are these things demons or angels or Sasquatch? It was like my mind felt like I was floating or something of that nature. Utopia. Then I felt like I was going to black out, and all of a sudden I started to cry and shake. I could not control either one, and my legs felt like I wasn't going to be able to stand up for much longer. I told myself, "You better take off and run into the house and lock the doors," as if that would have done any good. If they wanted in, they would have gotten in however they wanted to. Several hours later, my husband came home, and I was still crying and shaking out of control. He grabbed my shoulders and said, "Adele, what's wrong? What's happened to you?" I've never been much of a crier, so we knew something awful had happened. And in between sobs, I told him what had happened. I was afraid to tell him because I didn't think he'd believe me. And I'd just been through a lot health-wise. The doctor just told us that I had multiple sclerosis. The next day, he couldn't get me to go outside at all. I just sat and shook. He went down to get the mail. We lived in a trailer park, and while he was gone, I heard Betty, our next-door neighbor, scream like someone was killing her. So, somehow I got up my courage and I took off out the door, running towards her screams. When I found her, she was laying face down in the dirt behind her house. I took her arm gently and tried to roll her over, and she started screaming at me. Her eyes were all glazed over like she couldn't see me, and she yelled at me as blood trickled down her face. "I told you to leave me alone and let me go." I said, "Betty, this is Adele, your neighbor. Who are you talking to, and who did this to you?" She yelled, "You leave me alone." I said, "I'm here to help you." She said, "If I wanted your help, I would have asked you for your help. Now go away and leave me alone." Wow. So I turned around and ran as quickly as I could so I could get back into my house, shaking out of control yet again. Or should I say still? I was worried about her. She had such a big gash on her forehead. She needed stitches by the time I left her. Her shirt was soaked in blood. By then, my husband got back home, and I told him what had happened, and that I thought that the Sasquatch did it to her. She was in her 70s. She and her husband had lived in that house and park for over 20 years. After I found her laying like that, they sold their house and were moved out within a month. She would never talk to me about what happened that day, but I know in my heart that the Sasquatch had hurt her somehow. We didn't stay there much longer as our trailer got black mold in it and we had to move. We moved almost 30 miles away, and they followed me. It's like I've been tagged. You ask me, how do I know? My husband came in the house the first winter that we had been in our new place and said, "Adele, they followed you out here." I went pale. I said, "How do you know?" He said, "There are footprints in the snow." He said they are distorted because the sun has melted them, but you can see their toes. So I got my camera and I took photos of them. I still have the photos and you can see their toes, but they are really distorted. I didn't know that they were out there, or I would have gone out and took photos of them before the sun had melted them so badly. It's been years now, 15 going on 16, and I'm not sure if they are still watching me or not, or if I'm still tagged. But we're fixing to move out of this trailer park. There's some really bad things going on here, so I'm wondering if when we do move, if they'll follow me yet again. So far, they've not hurt me. Not on the outside anyway, but they've crushed my spirit. It only takes one time to do some real damage to us humans. Well, Steve, I guess I'll let you go. It's 3:25 a.m. and I have to get up early. Take care, my friend, and thank you for having a place where we can share what has taken place in our lives. It's not easy living with it all bottled up inside. I'm grateful that you're there and that you have this place where we know that those that hear what has happened to us won't mock us and put us down. Or better yet, just walk away shaking their heads saying you need to seek out some mental help. When really, all I've shared was what really happened, so they are the ones who needs that help. I wish President Trump would tell us all the truth, even though we already know the truth. I just want everyone else to know it as well. Thank you. Take care of everyone that you love, and I'll be watching Adele Hayes, West Michigan. Adele, appreciate you so much. And in your words, you can tell you care about people big time, so thanks for coming here and sharing what you got. I'm sorry it's had a negative impact on you. I hope you're doing well today. And there you go, you guys. Another one, right? What a kind woman. And she's concerned about everybody here. It's awesome. Oh, what do we got here? We've got a picture of me. This is called The Dread. This was right behind you when you turned around to leave when it all got silent. I tried to send this the day you posted the video, but I'm not sure I used the correct email. I'll send it again. All right, well, let's have a look. That's a little odd, isn't it? I don't even remember the name of that video, but I remember the day. I'm going to have to stop the camera for a second so I know exactly where to put this picture. All right, well, that's interesting. Take from what you will or leave it, you guys. I don't know if somebody's familiar with which email or video that was, but you can check it out. That was a creepy day. Now, I guess the only thing would be for me to go back there, I suppose, right? Like I always preach to everyone. Here's another email. This is titled Sasquatch Wanted My Son. Ew. Hi, Steve. My name is Carl Weeks. Feel free to use my name as I don't give a shit what the window lickers think or say. Good man. Right on. I found your channel nearly a year ago, and I've been subscribed and I listen every day. I'm sorry to hear about your horse, bro. The bonds we form with our friends are deep and lasting, and his loss, I know, is hard on your spirit. I've shared this story 2 different times to your email, but without some of the details because I thought it would be too long. So I'm resending it again with the details I left out before. Maybe this will find you, and maybe contains a piece for someone else, or just gives them encouragement to know that they aren't in the boat alone. In that boat. Right on, man. Good on you. Appreciate you. Thank you. Oh, got the radio left on. I'm going to turn that off. All right. Here's my story in 2 parts. Oops, sorry. Losing my spot. Here's my story in 2 parts. It's 2 parts because I finally put 2 and 2 together. A little on my background. I grew up hunting and trapping with my father, so I learned very young about being in the woods. I spent most of my life hunting, trapping, and fishing, minus my time in the military. And it was 28 years ago in early August. My 4-year-old son and I went scouting game trails, and I was teaching him to track. We had been out most of the day without incident when, sometime early afternoon, I caught a whiff of something very foul-smelling. I at first thought it was a stank-ass bear, so I kept my boy very close to me. This went on for an hour, where I would smell it and then not. I got the strange feeling when every hair in my body went rigid. I caught movement on my left side and I stopped and watched, frozen by choice. Looking around intently, I seen a mass about 100 yards away in the thick firs. I knew this property very well as I've hunted it for years. It didn't move. It would only move when we did. I normally never went in the woods without a weapon while scouting, but this day I did. All I had was my custom-made Bowie knife with a 12-inch blade. I thought it a good idea to start heading back to the house. The whole time, every hair in my body was standing up and I was nervous. Not scared at this point, just on alert. I've never been the type of man that gave any thought, either way, to ESP, ghosts, or anything along these lines. And this thought came into my mind that said, "Give me the child." My blood went ice cold, and I thought back to whatever the hell this was over my dead body, MFer. I'm a formidable man. 6'2", 265, and saw that I knew all I had was my knife, but it's going to be what it is. If that, whatever it is, came after my son. There was a huge sugar pine blowdown, and I sent my son to the very top of it. I went up about 10 feet for a better look at my surroundings and vantage points for a defense or an attack. I remember thinking, "Come and get it, asshole." We stayed there for roughly half an hour, then slowly made our way back to the house. I caught glimpses of something which I shrugged off as a hungry bear stalking us because of my son. We made it back to the homestead, and I never said anything to my wife about what had taken place, and I never mentioned it to my son again after that. Wow. We had been homesteading this property for the last 2 years. I worked my ass off clearing the land for the house. I dug the well and the septic. I dug every footing for the house by hand. I mixed over 400 bags of concrete by hand for the footing under the house. We lived in a tarp tent for 2 winters here in Maine before I had the house up. Dried, in, and usable. That spring I was going to purchase a solar generator system for the house so we would have power. At this point, we were still using a generator. And fast forward 6 months. It was about 8 p.m. and I went out to start the generator. It was February. We had about 3 feet of snow on the ground, and there was about 3 to 4 inches of crust on the snow. Even at my size, I could run across the top without breaking through. I cleared an acre behind the house to the woodline for the solar array that I was going to purchase in the spring. I lifted the cover of the generator and choked it. I gave it a pull, and I heard a crunch in the tree line 60 or 70 yards to my right. There was some moonlight, just enough so that you could see and make out basic stuff. And I looked for a couple of minutes and blew it off as a moose or a big deer. I leaned over to pull the generator cord, and again I heard a crunch. I thought to myself, this was no moose or a deer, any animal that I could figure. I looked again at the tree line to my right, but I couldn't make anything out. On guard now, I went to lean forward and I heard the crunch, crunch, and I looked up and I seen this massive figure coming right at me. I was 10 yards from the door and I hauled ass. I cleared 4 steps and there was a thin layer of ice on the porch, and as I threw the storm door open, my right leg went under it, raking up the entire shin. I'm returning as I grabbed the doorknob and looking over my left shoulder, and our eyes locked. Now, bear in mind, I was 10 yards from the door. He was 60 to 70 yards from me. And in the time I covered 10 yards, this thing covered 60 or 70. Holy shit. That was only a second. Seemed like much longer. Our eyes locked. And at this point, don't ask me how or what, but it was like the sun had just come out. I could make out his face, and the look on it was he was pissed off. His eyes, I'm guessing, were about 6 to 7 inches apart. His nose was down like ours. His mouth had large lips, and I remember his neck was so thick. His muscle structure was insane. The width across his shoulders was easily 4 to 5 feet. He was clearly massive in size and presence. From the rafter tails on the house, it was 9 feet from the ground, and he was massive. The top of his shoulder was level with the rafter tails. My guess is he was easily 10 feet tall, and if I had to guess, he was in the neighborhood of 800 to 900 pounds. As I clawed my way through the house, my fear immediately turned to anger. I looked up at my wife and kids, and she had a look on her face like I'd lost my mind. I definitely felt like he was a threat, and I thought to myself, I'm going to kill you. I grabbed the 30-06, leaning near the door, racking the bolt, and driving away into the chamber. Having no fear for my own safety, I went back to my time in combat, and I knew what had to be done. Out the door I went with every intention of eliminating this threat, but there was nothing. I scouted the perimeter, and nothing. I went inside. My wife asked me what the hell was going on, and I explained to her what I'd seen and what had happened. And she thought it was just a bear. But bears aren't that big here, and they were in hibernation. The next morning, I took her and the kids outside at the back of the house, and where this thing I know now was a Sasquatch had come from. The strides he made were massive, easily 9 feet. And he covered 60 to 70 yards in the time it took me to cover 10. Massive and extremely agile. After that, I took the kids to the bus stop, armed to the teeth. A 50 cal handgun on my side and a 30-06, and I would pick them up armed the same way. I rented a house in Bangor, Maine, and got my family the hell out of there. It was about a year later where I was sitting in a stand hunting, and had remembered the time I'd smelled that foul smell. And the words put into my thoughts, give me the child came back. And to this day, I still believe the two encounters were the same being. I know and believe full well they are no effing ape, despite what the mainstream ass-wipe Sasquatch so-called experts say. They are far more advanced than we are in thought, strength, speed, and ability to move through time without being noticed. There were no tracks leading away from the house, just the ones when he came for me. I've never shared this story with anyone but my mother. And she agreed. I've never shared this story with anyone but my mother, and she agreed they were out there. I honestly don't give a shit if anyone believes me. I know what happened, and I know what I saw. Sorry this is so long, Steve. I tried to get as much of the story in there as I could. I know you get thousands of emails, and if this makes it to the channel, great. If it doesn't, at least I got off my chest. Feel free to use my name, Steve. Love the hunt stories. Keep coming. Sincerely, your friend, Carl Weeks. I remember reading the first half of that. I'm not sure. You said you sent it a few times, but either way, it doesn't matter. It's a good one to share with everyone. It would have been interesting to know what point did his tracks disappear, I wonder. You know what I mean? Did his tracks disappear once you closed the door? It's such a freaking bizarre fact going on in our lifetime. Holy shit. Take from what you will, leave it, but I believe every word this man just shared here. I believe every word of it myself. The tracks stopped after. Didn't leave the house. Crazy. Where'd he go? Okay? Where did he go? Where do they go when the tracks stop in the snow? Oh, that's a rhyme, isn't it? Where do they go after the tracks stop in the snow? Valid question. I hope we find out before, sooner than later, you know? I want to know. I want to know everything. Now this one sounds familiar too. I don't know why I have so many marked as unread, but I have to read them. They're marked as unread. I have to read them. And sometimes they've been read years back, but once you start, you got to finish it for the people that are here that are new. And it's painless. And if it is painless, well, you know, like I said, just get your refund out the door, or you got your ticket to be here. Steve, is Mike Ray. Thank you for reading my story. After you read my story, you asked for a description of what I saw. Oh, no problem, sir. It's burnt into my soul. And here is her description. As I looked behind the tent, it was 0500. I didn't add in my story that I had a flashlight, nor that I stoked the fire. There was enough light for me to make out her face and her body down to her knees. Her face was dark brown in color, like a chocolate lab color, and her skin was smooth, no wrinkles. Hair wasn't covering the mid part of her face, rather, the hair stopped at her sideburns, down to the bottom of her chin, both sides. Her hair was mid-forehead and messy. Shoulders, they were nearly 4 feet across, round but subtle shoulders. I said it was a female, boobs and all. Yes, breasts were muscular, yet sagging down to the upper stomach. Nipple definition obvious, with no hair around them. Stomach was pot-belly, but muscular. The hair was slightly thicker than that of the face, but thin enough to see definition. Her arms came down to lower thighs. Hair thick and much longer, I'd say about 5 inches in length. Massive legs. Wide together, bigger than the waist. Groin had thick hair covering, no obvious parts visible. What captivated me was her face. Large, almond-shaped eyes, just like ours. Slightly yellow scalar, the white part of the eyes, with dark brown or black pupils. No hair, but skin was weathered. No wrinkles. Smudged nose. Nostrils slightly forward. Large eyebrows with noticeable brow ridge. Ears, not really noticeable. Thick lips, roughly 4 inches wide. And I noticed her face more than anything else, since she seemed to be actually smiling. Much like humans, I know how they can impress emotion. Her physical appearance scared me. I believe she stood about 8 feet tall. And as we looked at the tree she stood by, her head was even with the branch we later measured to be 8'1". Everything about her was amazing. But as I said, when I felt my father's hand touch me, I was at peace, and as at peace with her and somewhat more curious. That's all I remember, Steve. I sure hope that helps. I couldn't see past her knees. She was standing in brush next to her sight. These beings are real. It's not imagination. This event has opened my spirit for more, and I need answers. Mike. Read that one too, but I don't mind reading that again. That is one hell of a detailed description, isn't it? Very, very well said, detailed description. Now, what do we got here? Photos with some, what's called tree structures, I guess, log structures. I got a whole slew of these in one row here. It marks as not read. So, here we go. The pictures don't look familiar. Well, hell, Steve, I've been enjoying the stories of others for such a long time that I'm now breaking down and sharing my own. I've loved watching an honest outdoorsman's channel grow from 185,000. And I can't honestly say I ever remember hearing you say those annoying hit subscribe and smash the like button words. Please don't use my name, although I will probably give myself away to those who know me through details that follow. I'm a USAF veteran and held a security clearance from day one. I'm a member of one of those high IQ societies that you can't mention without people responding with some sort of animosity or contempt. We live in a world where intelligence is secondary to more temporary things like beauty, money, and perversion. Sad, huh? Anyway, shortly out of high school, my buddy Willie and I framed and roofed houses for our small town construction company owner. Our boss was a hard but fair man that enjoyed drinking wild turkey. He wanted to get out of the house one night and ride dirt roads. He asked Willie to be his designated driver, and Willie invited me along. And at one point, far enough into the bottle for him to be serious, I jokingly threw out the old, "What if Bigfoot walked out right in front of us?" Man, our boss got a dead serious look in his eyes. Without ever breaking eye contact, he told me that he was in a tree stand hunting down in Alabama when, quote, "one of these things walked right in front of my stand. I had my rifle on it and I could see its face perfectly in the scope," end quote. I got the impression this wasn't some 100 yards away sighting. It was close. "So what did you do?" I asked. His voice got a little lower, and he looked away. Finally, he kind of shook his head and simply said, "I couldn't shoot it. I just couldn't shoot it." Now, this is my first time hearing from someone with an actual experience with what we're taught to believe is a myth. This wasn't a guy you push or pester, if you knew what I mean, but I couldn't resist. I said, "Well, what? Was it too scary or what?" He looked back at me intently and said, "No, like I missed the whole point, and I guess I did." Oops, hold on a second, just dropped something. Sorry, hold on. Lost my spot, come on. I hate that. Said, "No, like I missed the whole point, and I guess I did." And then he continued, "It looked too human. It was too human looking." That was the last he ever spoke about it, and I left it at that. Fast forward through military service. Too many cold-hearted women, a horrible factory job, and a draining life in general. I did the only thing to keep me sane. I gave everything away and took off in an old Jeep Cherokee with little more than a tent, hammock, and guitar. While camping at the Grand View Sandbar in Bickley, West Virginia on the New River, I had my first experience. Close to 1 p.m. at night. He must have meant 1 a.m. I was in the tent, comfortably laying down, but not yet asleep. And all of a sudden, this gigantic whoop came from halfway up the side of the mountain. And no lie, my immediate thought response was, I've seen enough History and Discovery Channel crap to know what that was. And about 40 seconds later, it made another loud whoop. These whoops were so guttural, and the lung capacity was so superior to any human that any human reproducing it must sound like an insult on a joke to these creatures. Shortly after the second whoop, I heard what sounded like a 10-inch tree breaking. I know sounds are loud at night, especially at the bottom between two mountains, but this was no small tree. Next morning, I asked the family camping next to me if they heard anything. The son-in-law told me he heard it. The whole experience made me Google this area, and it turns out it is a massive hot spot. I asked the father of the campsite crew, who had frequented campgrounds for years, if he had any experiences, and he said no. Then he said, "I'll tell you one thing though. I walked down to the furthest campsite. They were down at one end one time. There were a bunch of younger folks down there drinking and cutting up. I saw one of their tents was filled with nothing but electronics. I asked them what they were doing with all that equipment, and they laughed and said, 'Can you believe it? The government pays us to come out here and search for Bigfoot.' So we set up camp and party. In the middle of the night, though, we get up and go trek around the woods." Then he told me how later that night, sure enough, he saw them all geared up, taking their midnight hikes. I spent much of my last 5 years enjoying the free camping areas like the BLM lands and national forests from coast to coast. The worst vibes I ever got was at the top of this off-road four-wheel drive path that led straight up this mountain in Colorado. I got to the top, got out. It was a super creepy and eerie feeling. There was no way I was staying there. And as I turned around and started back down the mountain, I saw the back of something as wide as the broadside of a moose walking down the hill away from me. I only saw the back, no head. No legs were visible because it was going down a steep hill on one end of a switchback. Its hair looked like a silverback. That's the only way to explain it. The last experience I had was the second time I wasn't comfortable camping overnight in an area. I had a 30-foot Class A that I would take anywhere. A 30-foot Class A motorhome. My friend Ollie and I headed down a fire road in the Coconino National Forest. Ollie has had his own crazy encounters in Indiana where he's from. We drove towards the end of this fire road, and the stick structures we started seeing were incredibly intricate and impressive. We turned around to snap a few pics that I'll attach. These weren't loosely piled or half-assed structures. Closer to the exit where I felt more comfortable, we found a place that could accommodate the size of my rig and start setting up camp. I figured something that would be watching us probably already was watching us, so I sat out in the fold-out chair looking slowly and closely around the area with my pair of binoculars. There's still decent light left, and these were truly high-quality pair. At one point I noticed what looked like an upside-down golden wheat shaft faintly moving. That's when I realized I was looking at arm hair hanging down. I slowly panned right and I saw that on the other side of this tree it was behind. There, poking out but not more than 3 feet off the ground, was this thing that looked like a gibbon in the face. I couldn't make it out clearly enough to study the features, but it had light golden hair surrounding a black mask-type face. For what I've heard, I don't think I care to see an adult anywhere remotely up close. But seeing this thing, as small as it was, as far away as it was, maybe 30 yards, made me feel like I was seeing a unicorn. Just a simple, profound amazement. Then I tried to show Oli, and he decided to walk towards that general area. And needless to say, I was going to spend the night there and become some unacknowledged being's human goldfish in a 30-foot bowl waiting for my glass windows to be thumped. That's funny. I hope this wasn't too long or too uneventful. Either way, it's it's honest truth, and I'll take fact over fiction any day. Appreciate all you do. Seriously. I can imagine all too well the PTSD that, let's say, unconventional experiences can leave. And side note, we're too stupid of a race to agree on at what point life begins. Admitting these things exist hits close to home. In the future, laws will have to decide what percentage constitutes human versus hybrid. If they admit that all they know about these beings, they'd have to decide between mass protection or mass extinction of these beings. Too many layers, man. You're better off arguing with the trolls at Trash Talk via emails. Haha. And we know that's a worthless endeavor. Stay safe, brother. Alright, man, you stay safe too. Appreciate that email and the photos. I better put them in the Dropbox thing right now so I don't forget to include these in the video, which is easy to do. Too easy to do. All right. And here's another follow-up email, luckily from one of the emails we just heard. And this is titled, Digging Deeper and Expanding My Mind. Steve, it's Mike Ray again. I sent the description of the female Bigfoot to you. My dad and I decided since the weather is warm and dry, we'd do a bit of investigation in the area we saw the female. We set up trail cameras near a trail bordering a swamp area near to where we hiked in March. We left 4 cameras 50 yards apart facing the trail and the swamp. 3 of the 4 we recovered, all with 2 weeks of photos of deer, elk, and bobcat. No Bigfoot. The missing trail cam was not cut down. Rather, the 6-inch alder we attached it to was snapped above the mount and slipped off. Gone. Heavy Oregon grape bushes on the floor around, so no prints. As we searched for the cam, we noticed along the edges of the swamp there were several areas where the cattails were pulled out of the mud with missing rootstock. It looked as if they were bitten off, then simply discarded on the ground. It wasn't a harvest. Rather, it appeared to be like something was browsing, selecting the young plants, leaving the tall, older stalks alone. There were water-filled prints noticeable, however, not defined. I didn't take photos since they don't impress anyone. And as we moved around to the south side of the swamp, we were hit with the odor of decomp. Strong smell of something dead. The smell came from an area where it's full of blackberry, scotch broom, and heavy undergrowth, tucked up against short pine, all next to a planted area of pine and fir planted in 1981. There are 2 streams feeding the swamp, year-round. A larger creek, 6 to 8 feet across, 8 to 16 inches deep, running near the swamp, spilling into the Chehalis River. This creek hosts salmon 3 times a year for spawn. Other food sources include Oregon grape, blackberry, huckleberry, wild apples off of 9 trees. They're obviously eating the cattails, crawfish, and freshwater mussels. A large herd of elk reside in that area and move about in an area some 50 square miles. Plenty of deer as well. Once in a while you run across an old deer skeleton, not dumped by a man, rather miles from the main road where nobody hikes. I believe we stumbled onto their habitable food sources, perhaps home range. We haven't seen nor heard one in the 6 times we've gone out since my first encounter with my dad. But I am clear, as my father is as well, on how these Bigfoot survive. Since my encounter, I've been starving for more information. I need to know more. I've been focusing on the things I've not heard anyone describe. Their search area has been confined to this water source so far, however. I'll venture out further to find anything to do with them. I smartly take someone with me since I've got no idea what to expect, but we'll continue to search for more answers. I hope this helps someone fill in the blanks. Or, as you say, pieces of the puzzle. Steve, keep inspiring everyone. Damn glad you're here, Mike. I'm damn glad you're here too, Mike. Give us an update, would you? Let us know what you've learned for yourself along your ride. I'm interested to hear what you got. What you got? Now, I better get my butt in gear. I'm going to go home. I got to run home, but I got so much I got to do. I got to pack all the jugs of gas down for the boat, which is a pain in the butt, but it saves, I think, what would it save? Around almost, well, it's $1.70 a liter for gasoline, I think. $1.70 in town, and I think it's like $2.20 out here at the dock. So I pack it. Anyways, I gotta fuel up the boat, clean up my garbage, clean up the interior. Sarah demanded I bring home my bedding and get it washed. That's probably a good idea. I'm gonna do that, and then carry on. Just keep rolling forward, right? Anyway, I should be back tomorrow. But make sure you email me, you guys, or somebody. Just get it out. Share experience. Share my story at howtohunt.com. All right? Share my story at howtohunt.com. And we'll get it shared. And what else? Sarah's... Was it Friday? Friday the 13th today. I was a little leery about going out fishing because I went out around that dangerous point again solo. I'm like, no. A day of the frickin' month isn't going to do shit. So I went. So far, so good. Friday the 13th. Sarah's sale continues until this Sunday at midnight. And her discount code is HUNT20. HUNT20 is her discount code for a big sale. Been firmly instructed to pass that on. So, it's passed on. Hope you didn't get seasick watching the view behind me. I got my back to the camera. Like, I noticed the wind's been spinning me around like a frickin' top on the anchor rope here. I'm only in 50 feet of water. But anyway, I'll be back shortly, you guys. Take care. Have a great weekend. Be safe.